Ladies and gentlemen, we will now proceed with the next session. The speakers for this session are Mr. Bruce Poe, CEO of the Institute of Technical Education Services, Singapore, Dr. K. Lakshminarayana, Director, Skill Development Corporation, Government of Andhra Pradesh, India, and Dr. N Varaprasad, Principal Consultant, Singapore Education Consulting Group. The session will be chaired by Mr. Manish Sabharwal, Co-founder and Executive Chairman, Teamlease, India. I now hand over to Mr. Sabharwal.
Thank you. So I think this sort of takes it to the next level of the morning discussion. One of my favorite quotes is from an American politician, Mario Cuomo, and he says, "We politicians campaign in poetry, but we govern in prose." It applies completely to skill development. I mean, the poetry is interesting, and there's not much disagreement on the poetry. But the prose lies in the institutions, and we've got 3 different institutions presenting, some public sector, some private sector, some sort of a combination of ones. I think the birth defect has been is that government, at least from where I come from, government institutions have had sort of an execution deficit. Private sector has a trust deficit, and non-for-profits have a scale deficit. But hopefully we'll see all 3 different perspectives, and then we can take questions at the end. I think we will do about 15 to 20 minutes of the presentation. So Bruce, you first.
I started off with this particular picture of IT College Central and our HQ. This was completed in 2012, and it's our latest mega campus in Ang Mo Kio. What you see, of course, is a very spanking new, ultra-modern, very well equipped state-of-the-art laboratories. But transforming technical education is not just about having new and spanking buildings. That is more to it than that. But more important is that in the transforming of technical education is the transforming the lives of the students that come through our doorways. And transforming lives of the students means giving them good education, but then giving them good jobs in the end when they graduate, and having good careers when they're the companies they're working for, and being good citizens in the country. I will tell the IT story in 4 parts. First, of course, our humble beginnings. We did not get to that state, 50 years ago. We come from very humble beginnings, and I will talk about the development of technical education. And of course, like in all countries, we face our own storms, our key challenges in the early years. And of course, how we transform, and I like to call this the swan story. Everybody knows the ugly duckling story, how we transform from ugly duckling to swan. And last but not the least is the impact that we have to the economy and to the society as a whole. IT is used to be called, by Verbiger, is the end. Because if you can't, achieve, then you go to an ITE. But later on, when I talk to him, he come out with another movie that ends with "Is the end that counts." So I think at the end of the day, it's the end that counts, and the impact that the ITE has on society and on the job market. The humble beginnings, I like to show you photos. Mainly my presentation will be very tutorial to give you some context of where we come from and the development history of ITE. So the humble beginnings, you see the workshops are very humble. The buildings are also, very humble. In some cases, they were made out of, old army camps. And you can see the equipments are fairly basic. I would like to say that the development of the Singapore's vocational and technical education follows very closely with the Singapore's economic development. I used to work for the Singapore's Economic Development Board for 10 years in the Manpower Development Division. And one of the key and very innovative initiative of EDB is to develop manpower for the industry. questioned just now about how do we plan, what are companies coming to our shores. I can tell you that EDB plans to recruit, and EDB you think that is a statutory board consists of economists, but we are generally engineers trying to do what it takes to get the job done. We started off in the 60s and 70s, and basically on the Independence Day, it's more to provide just any kind of jobs. So the jobs are usually very labor intensive. It's a vector-driven economy. And we just came out of the Federation, and the British Army has pulled out, which also affected the employment in Singapore. So what EDB started to do was to provide the basic skills training in the early industrialization stage. And then in the 80s, when we go for the export market, which is against all countries going to the direction, we need to beef up our skills because the products that we sell to the world market. And because of that, we need to quickly upskill our labor. And then we have this structured pre-employment training in our institutions, and in particular the Economic Development Board training centers. And as we go to the 80s and 90s, I would say, we need to upgrade further because the industry has upgraded. We need more automation. CAD/CAM was introduced. In semiconductor industries, you have semiconductors, IC design, automation engineers needed. So the EDB has the German Singapore Institute, French Singapore Institute, Japan Singapore Institute of Software Technology, and the Japan Singapore Institute of Chemical Institute that does basically very targeted areas of technology that is needed for the industry. This is what it takes to attract actually industry to set up in Singapore. And in Singapore's case, in fact, the EDB use all these institutes as a promotion tool to attract the industry to set up in Singapore. So in a way, you need to plan, far ahead of time because firstly you need to train the trainers to the latest in technology that is not available in Singapore, and then after that, then you will train the trainees, and after the trainees are trained and they are put into the industry. But we use that as a promotion tool to place all this trained manpower to the industry that we attract, and we promise them certain numbers because they are bonded to EDB and to be placed into the companies. So the 1990s, we have we become the newly industrialized economy, and the wage level has also gone up. So we need to really upgrade our skills level to the next level. And of course, in the 2000s, when we are in an innovation-driven economy, it's very knowledge and innovation intensive. We transform again, our UX system. I will show you the key milestone of the transformation of ITE and its predecessors. It started off in 1963 when we are when the first vocational institute were set up, within the school system. We have the last year trade school, and we do really basic training. And then 1968, Technical Education Department under the Ministry of Education was set up. 1973, the Industrial Training Board was set up. Basically, structured pre-employment skills training. But there were a lot of dropouts, and people coming in probably dropouts from schools, some primary, some secondary schools. And then even when we merged the ITB with the Adult Education Board to form the VITB to provide the kind of mass skills training, the image of our VITB at that time was very good. Then in 1992, we take a very significant step by saying that we want every entry to the ITE to have a minimum of 10 years of general education to give them the basic grounding for them to further their technical and vocational education. So I think that was the sort of a trash hole that we do what we call post-secondary education from ITE. So the unique roles of ITE, we actually provide for the lowest academically inclined students. Every year we take in about 15,000 students. Enrollment, we have 28,000 students in ITE now. And this has contributed over the years a very low youth unemployment rate in Singapore. And the ITE always have to respond to the dynamic changes in the industry. And that is actually a must to us, that we must always respond to industry needs rather than training in a vacuum. And over the years, we have 1.5 million graduates that we have been trained in multiple sectors. And if you look at the sectors, we'll go to the student profile first. These are generally the student profile that comes into ITE. They either have the normal, GCE normal, technical or academic, and some with the GCE O levels before they are admitted. And the profile of the students that we have are generally from the poorer socio-economic class in Singapore. If you look at the chart, about 51% of the students come from a family income of less than 2,500 at the lower sector. So there are other implications because of this kind of poor economic class within our student profile. Braving the storm. This is a very stormy sea, and I think the ITE has faced its own storms over the years. The challenges before transformation, we have very negative image and low acceptance of the BPE among parents and students, and usually, we are the last resort. When they cannot go anywhere, they come to the ITE. There's a very limited range of programs, large numbers in each particular intake for particular courses, but not much range. Basic facilities and learning environment, and even the staff have very poor staff capabilities and poor morale. Talking about the SWAN story, how do we transform? I would like to say that our transformation takes place in three broad areas. Our hardware, which is our learning infrastructure and facilities. Our software, which are our product and promotion. And our hardware, which I think is the most important, the people and the culture. In terms of transformation, we have very intentional 5-year blueprints. We called it our strategic plans. We started way back in 1995 with the ITE 2000 and to establish post-secondary technical education. And then ITE breakthrough to establish a world-class technical education institution for knowledge-based economy. And then we go for ITE Advantage in 2005, wanting to be the global leader in technical education. And ITE Innovate in 2010, the global leader for innovation in technical education. And the latest ITE Trailblazer as a Trailblazer in career and technical education. These are 5-year plans, but every year we do adjustments, and we measure, KPIs. We have whole systems to make sure that all the 5-year strategic plans are carried out. Transforming the hardware. These are some of the older training institutions. They are rather small in size. And then you can see some of this, like Congo Vocational Institute, Pasir Panjang Vocational Institute, so on. The Magna Vocational Institute is one of the earliest, and it's really very simple, kind of building structures. Today we have 3 mega campuses. I think it must be I must say thanks to our Deputy Prime Minister Geok, he suggested that we should sort of aggregate all the institutions to mega campuses. Singapore being very small, we don't need to have so many campuses spread out and good transportation system. So we have the first mega campus built in College East in 2005, and then College West in 2010, and headquarters at College Central in late 2012. So these are some of the outlook of the building itself. You can see the fairly modern. This is the first one, College East, and College West. We have a full facility, so it's not just developing their technical skills. We also believe in developing, holistically a person. So some of these facilities will give the students ability to do sports, co-curricular activities, and so on. And then College Central today. More than the hardware that you see is the transforming the software. We believe in what we call the IT hands-on, minds-on, and hearts-on philosophy. Many of our students are very kinesthetic learners, so you cannot have a system that teach over a lecture theatre. Probably it will not last more than an hour. So you must have authentic learning environments, and you can use our hands to do things. And of course, minds-on, and after that we give the theory, and try to integrate the theory and practice. And also the hearts-on. So the hearts-on part, I think is important. The passion of the lecturers, the passion of the students for the community is also very important. And if you ask the students or our lecturers, I think without fear they will say that the students will say that they are very caring and very nurturing. And I think for the type of student profile that we have, we need to understand their background and have empathy and nurturing and encouraging and to build up their self-confidence. And the education outcome, what we want to do is to make world-ready, work-ready graduates and lifelong learners for lifelong. In the year 1992, when we established ITE, we have only 24 courses in 4 sectors. And by 2017, this year, we have 98 courses in 12 sectors. So it's very diversified. Probably any areas that you want ITE to do. From the then very low-skilled courses, you can see some of the equipment and even like dressmaking, don't do anymore, woodworking and so on, production, to very now niche market relevant courses from history and baking, to automatic engineering, aerospace technology, nursing, visual merchandising. We have what we call authentic learning environment and innovative learning environment, where you bring the industry into the campus and the students can practice. Where we can't, we will simulate and emulate. So over here, Service Innovation Center, where some tourism students will use this particular panoramic screen of the Singapore River to practice on their tourism skills. In the College East, you can see a vast variety of authentic learning environment, including an sort of mock-up ambulance for paramedic training, to the healthcare simulation training with very high fidelity kind of patients. Actually, they are robotic patients that can respond to medication, injections, and so on, to beauty, hair spa, and design center. And in the College West, where our hospitality school is located, we have a real restaurant cooked by students, served by students. We have a hotel, we have real guests, and then we have students over there. And the authentic learning in College Central, we have actual aeroplanes, and then we have a couple of aeroplanes and helicopters. We have even have cut up ship hull in our maritime hub, and where we cannot bring in, like for example, we cannot bring in oil rig. We have a 3D immersive VR environment where the students have practice, and we can simulate thunderstorms, we can simulate things that they can work on, and if they feel they will not injure themselves, of course they will learn through all this simulation. And we also incorporate augmented reality for aerospace technology. I asked my watch the AR for one. So for example, for very complex systems like the aerospace engine, where you can't really wake up and explain what actually goes on, we have what we call augmented reality. When you mouse over particular engine parts, things come to life, and you can simulate the airflow and to explain what goes on behind the engines. Okay? Just, then you can we also partner with many institutions all over the world. With 21 overseas institutional partners from Germany to US to Canada to Australia, Hong Kong, Germany, Switzerland, and so on. Other than staff and student exchange, which we benefited a lot, is also to learn best practices from everybody. And I think whatever stage that you are in the Tibet education, there's always something to learn from others. And we try to, over time, glean in the best practices all over the world, and we benchmark against the best in the world. Other than the institution partnership, we also partner with the industries. We have 120 active industry partners to help us, in authentic learning and capability development. Sometimes, of course, they implemented their hardware, software issue. And then transforming images, the image of IT. We actually measure our branding index from an index of 34%. Right now we are 78%. So over the years, we improve even on branding. So one very successful branding is Thinking Hands with Success. Over the years, we have many different things. And transforming the hardware, which is very important, is try to speed up. I think this is the most important part where we need to have very passionate and nurturing and caring lecturers for our students. And this is a care attitude that even our staff also is. And the staff capability development is very important. The staff stays on top of our capabilities, and we measure their capabilities at level 2 and level 3. And from 38%, we have turned it up to 95% of staff capability. And as I say, it's the end that counts. The result shows a remarkable 95% employer satisfaction, high enrollment, high success rate of students, strong employment rate. These are some of the key awards that ITU won, the Singapore Quality Award, Special Commendation, and so on. The IBM Harvard Innovation Award of Transforming Government, and a whole series of innovation awards. Success story, we have entrepreneurs like Sing Siong, boss, literally IB graduate, and another person, Mr. Huat, he now own company with precision engineering in the biomedical sector. And of course, other academic success, other success as well, including some graduates who are A-star directors. Other talents, including football stars, Olympians, professional success, ranking of the national parties. And some of the endorsement from Prime Minister, we are not just catering to the elite, but also minority, but also across the board for all students, United students. And this endorsement from Harvard Edge Center, and how IB's education can impact not just Singapore, but can be replicated overseas in other countries as well. And OECD recommendation, Singapore the best education and education. And I'd like to end with this part of IB's transformation is student success. Thank you very much.
Next one is by Dr. Lakshminarayana.
Good morning. I'll explain the current status, history, theory behind the skill development in India. I'm not going into those details. But one interesting and very positive thing is, at least we have come out now with the national skills qualification framework, and the industry is involved, because different sectors, policies are also there, and the regulatory bodies like University Grants Commission and the AICTI also has realized, as he mentioned, whether it is employment guarantee or skill guarantee, that's always there, but we are positively moving, and these are in fact a transition stage. And in this India, Andhra Pradesh is a new state. It was erstwhile Andhra Pradesh has divided into Telangana and Andhra Pradesh. The state was formed in June 2014 as a population of around 6 million, and there are cities with 1 million population, 27, and there is no capital city. Hyderabad is with the Telangana, we have to build our own capital city. That's where government of Singapore and government of Andhra Pradesh are jointly making an effort to build a new city, greenfield city in Amravati. And we have a coastline of 97,000, the second largest in the country, with an area of 160 square kilometers. And the key economic sectors are pharmaceutical, textile, agro-food processing, and how to convert this new state, how to skill it. Government has come out with they have formed a new department of skill development, entrepreneurship and innovation, and under it they implement the norm of Andhra Pradesh State Skill Development Corporation norm, which is a 51% private and 49% government. It's one of the industries and the chairman of the corporation, and the board of directors also come from the private sector. And it's a public-private partnership corporation. And the intent is to provide quality manpower and reskill the existing people and make Andhra Pradesh knowledge economy possible. It's very clear that he strongly believes that it's not only the capital and labor on the lines of Kenneth Arrow and Robert Solow economists. It is the end-user knowledge ecosystem which is very important for the economic development. That's the reason why we come out with the Andhra Pradesh State Skill Development Corporation to act as a single umbrella, because the various departments, 15 to 16 departments which are doing different programs, and there is no coordination. That's the reason why we come out. The vision being to be the best state in India, to be competing with the best in the world by 2022, when India celebrates the 75th year of independence, and to achieve the status of a fully developed state by 2010, 2029, which is our vision. And the vision is to skill around 20 million people in 15 years by meeting the skills given, and also their mission to send them across outside also to the world clients. And the target groups are all students who have not entered the education system, who have entered, opt out, undergraduate, graduate, engineering, technical, in-service, trade, craft, and self-help groups of women, because women make 50%. And the strategy is, in the first year, what we do is set up the phase, growth phase, and then 5 years where we will be in a position to do the remaining stabilization phase. And here, we have to say that as on today, the existing sectors which are contributing for the state domestic product is 9 sectors which are very, very important, which have been there. They contribute about 74% of the total state domestic product. But we have to skill in many sectors if we have to provide the skilling, and of all the things we have come to the conclusion that education sector, that is the morning also Singh was mentioning about it, Secretary was also telling where we stand, why we are here, why there are separate, skilling is separate, education is separate, pathways, how to combine them, how to make learning really happens in the schools and colleges. That is what is very important, but it is very easy to say, but it's very difficult. We know very well. The legacy is there from the college system, school systems. The number one is there is no alignment between school education and college education. That is the biggest problem. Number two, that's the reason why most of the colleges complain that students who are coming to the colleges are not college ready. And when we talk to the schools, they say that teachers who are, professors who are in the universities, they are not bothered about, after all, our students are their input, raw material, they never bother. They sit in the ivory towers and they never bother about it. This is the kind of criticism which is there. And at least in South India, we have in Andhra place 325 engineering colleges, around 400 MBA colleges, 300 polytechnic, more than 150 IT. Number of colleges are far exceeded. And everybody is established in college. As Secretary was mentioning in the morning, if private sector, public sector provision, there are problems, solution will arise. There are cases, I have to say, that has given scope for some of this. Because in Andhra Pradesh, nowhere in India, the whole fee will be reimbursed to the students. The result is non-serious students are entering the professional course. That's what is happening. Then taking into account all these factors into concern, we have realized that we should be in a position to provide learning environments in the schools and colleges where real learning happens. The question is how to make the classrooms dynamic. What kind of teacher selection, how to find the teachers, how to train them, how to retain them. These are the issues which are very vital. Training institutes, whether you call it a teacher or mentor, whether it is university, college, school, or the training institute, we should be in a position to think about those things. Then only we will be in a position to be successful in implementing this program. That we are very clear, and keeping those things, those basics. That means we need to have a new basics. We are in 21st century. 21st century needs 21st century skills, 21st century schools and colleges. And we have, the resources are always limited, but creativities are limited. We should be in a position to come out with experiences, not the classroom construction, but inside the classroom, what kind of learning experiences we are providing to the students is the issue. Therefore, we have thought of to implement this, we are implementing number of programs in at least 30 sectors. But I will be, because of lack of time, I will be touching only 2-3 sectors where education, because theme of the present session is that now we have decided that we should be in a position to use technologies for this benefit. That's the reason why we have created APSS therapy, uses our own, using the open platform, which is an open source course. We have come out with massive open online courses as well as learning tools for the educators. AVU is an online training program of the Amrita University. In collaboration with them, we are doing. We are also establishing Center for Excellences in various emerging sectors. All of you know about the machine learning, robotics, 3D printing, data analytics, cloud computing, and other things. These are some of the things. We have also come out with the certification courses in collaboration with Google. Google Associate Android Developers, Google Mobile Web Developers, Google Certified Professional, Google Certified Data English, Machine Learning, Nano Degree, all these things, data analysts. We have designed programs carefully, and we are into the second year of doing all these things. But first we have introduced the online training program, but we have realized that online program is not a success. Only self-motivated 10% of the top students are in a position to. That is true in the case of Coursera, edX, Udacity, all these cases also. In fact, edX has come out with the data, they have gone into the details, and we are in a position to learn something about the learning science more now. Because one million students or half a million students of the program, it is possible to capture 24/7 how students are learning, where he or she is stuck, how they are coming out, whether they are consulting the mentor, peers, books, or something else. Therefore, we have a huge data. That's the reason why Melinda Gates Foundation has financed to learn more about how learning is happening. That's one thing where, therefore, we have come out with now with a blending system, where we are both face-to-face and then online training program. We are training the trainer programs, intensive training of students are also we are giving for first 3 days. What is that they have to do? Then 50 hours on LMS, then again intensive training, and then we are providing an opportunity for them to interact themselves by establishing technical clubs where they should be in a position to do some of the projects which are real projects. Because we believe that college or education, university is a place where there is a freedom both for the student and teacher to discuss, to debate, to deliberate on various issues bothering the society, where the institution is located, and come out with solutions, alternative solutions, by forming teams consisting of people from different backgrounds. That's what 21st century skills means. Vidisha Mehta was now telling about the World Economic Forum, about what are the 10 skills. Yes, 21st century skills are, according to me, there are 5 skills which are very, very essential. Whatever the course is, it is critical thinking and problem solving, communication, whatever the language is, collaboration or working in teams. 3 is creativity or innovation or imagination, and 4th is courage. Courage is not bravado, it is the toughness. Toughness is not about the muscles, it's integrity is the toughness. Honesty is the toughness. Because students should be in a position to learn those things in the school, college itself. Then only, we cannot teach values separately. Values need to be taught. That's what we used to do in the previous days. Therefore, keeping those things, though they may appear simple, but for doing, ultimately this is what is required. If we have to provide, if we are in a position to provide skills, knowledge, attitudes and habits of mind and heart, then only students after spending 4 years, they will be in a position to fit in the workplace and they are also fit in the life. But the major criticism in Indian professional courses is, after spending 4 years or 3 years, only 22% of the students are fit in workplace, rest need reorientation or reskilling. That is the major problem which we should be in a position to avoid. Then the wastage of time, quality, money, every aspects can be seen. That's the reason why we have taken those things, basic things into consideration. And we have devised all the programs with a lot of thinking and involved all the stakeholders. Unfortunately, in India, policy making stops at the doorstep of the classroom. Teacher thinks, he or she thinks that it is their kingdom. But the question is, what kind of rigor we have to introduce? What kind of conversations are happening in the classroom? Teachers are doing 2 things in the classroom. One, how to live in a society, then how to participate in the economy. Participate in the economy means to go to the market, they should be in a position to choose right product for right price. That's what participate in the economy. Living in the society means when they go to the polling booth, they should be in a position to exercise the franchise in such a way. They elect good people's representatives so that democracy will further deepen and in a happy setup. They will become not only responsible citizens, more than that they will become great human beings. This is the philosophy behind what we are doing in Andhra Pradesh. Keeping that in view, we are having a number of international collaborations as well, where Stanford University Innovation Fellows. For the last 2 years, around 40 colleges, if there are 60 colleges are participating from India, from Andhra Pradesh alone, 24 colleges are participating. And students have spent 1 week, 2 weeks in Stanford University. 4 students from each college, along with a faculty member. That is making others also realize the importance of learning. That's a successful program, and we are also under IUCE, we have faculty improvement programs are doing where, in India, faculty members are recruited, they are never trained, all of you know very well, whether it is a degree college or university college. Subsequently, they are sent for the orientation course, but before entering to the classroom, there is no formal training. But we are providing the training, and we believe training means not spraying and praying. We believe in a 100% training where it will stick the whole. That is where we are investing our time, effort, money. Because in education, it is not how much you spend, it is how you spend is important. Therefore, spending priorities are very, very important. That will have a lot of impact. And one more thing is, assessment, according to us, is the silent killer of innovation. Nothing is skill. Some of you who have heard Eric Mazur, the applied physics professor in Harvard University, some of you might have seen, and how we are assessing, what kind of thing we are assessing, and we believe that student study habits are driven by the methods of assessment. Whether the choice, multiple choice, the open-ended, what is that? Whether the teachers are in a position to give productive examples so that student is in a position to connect theory to practice, examples which students are seeing every day in the community where they are living. It's very difficult. Telling is very easy. We have to understand the difficulty of a good teacher, a top teacher, an effective teacher. It's very difficult to bring those kind of perspectives into the classroom. I remember Denmark minister was asked why they are best in the world. He said, our classrooms, our examinations reflect our classrooms reflect our society life in the country. We are trying to do that. That's what we are trying to do. And University, Northeast University for the for Agriculture, Iowa, we are doing MIT also we are doing. And in the school sector, this is the last thing which I want to tell, with Google. Google want to train around 2 million app developers. We are in collaboration with them to make workshops, robotics and tools, life skills, vulnerability mapping, Google Cardboard, and they are having it countrywide competitions. Our students are enthusiastic to participating, and you remember we are giving for each of the schools where marginalized of the marginalized section, first generation students, rural students are there, 40 laptops we are giving them freely. We are exposing them every day for 1 hour, and we are getting good results. I am happy to say that we are seeing a good results in the school sector. These are some of the things which are doing. Google India, how we are doing it, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, final, and total we are already trained from the students. The people will get certificates, others will get prizes. These are some of the things. And one more top thing is, along with Siemens, investing 3,000 crore rupees, we are establishing 6 centers for excellence, and under each of center there is a sub-center. It is a hub and spoke model where all the latest things about the IoT, 3D printing, big data, analytics, machine learning, AI, everything is being learned. We have established those things and we are assessing them. The students will get Siemens certificate which is valid throughout the globe. That's what we are trying to do, and we have got some of the awards as well. These are some of the things which I have explained, but informal sector, for the self-help groups, and the agriculture sector, we are taking number of things. Slowly, the composition of the state domestic product is changing from agriculture to service sector. That is what we are trying to do. I am ready to take any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
The next one is by Dr. Varaprasad. I think this presentation sort of reinforces for you that 29 chief ministers matter more than one prime minister for skill development. I say that not with any sort of prejudice. I just mean that India is a continent very different opening balances for states, very different job habitats. And so competitive federalism is sort of starting to work much better. It's working in many areas, but in skills it's particularly improving. Dr. Varaprasad.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Being the seventh speaker today, I feel like Elizabeth Taylor's seventh husband. How to do the same thing but make it more interesting. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon to you. First of all, let me confess that I'm not an economist, nor a policymaker, nor a researcher. I'm just a plain old educator who has been involved in education for a very long time. We had a very good number of insightful papers and speeches and presentations, and we will continue to have them. So I'm trying to see how I can fit my modest presentation into this context. What I thought I would do is to go back to basics, because we have a lot of presentations which have taken us, quite a long distance already with skills and new technology. But I want to ask the question about skills itself. What are skills? What do we mean by skills? We seem to have an implicit common understanding when we talk about skills. So let me just go back. We've been attuned to categorizing skills in three simplistic ways. Blue collar skills. And I suspect that much of our discussion is about blue collar skills. We talk about blue collar skills in manufacturing, in construction, in transportation, in heavy engineering, in steel making. These are the kinds of skills that we seem to be talking about to a large extent. But we also have what's known as pink collar skills, which are the social service skills. Nursing, for example, people in the healthcare industry, people in the caring industry, hospitality industry, and so on and so forth. And then we have white collar skills. So they're a very traditional way of looking at skills. Where do you fit in? If you're a male and you don't have too much education, you're a dropout, you go into blue collar. If you're a female, you don't have a degree, you go into pink collar. If you're either male or female with a degree, you go into white collar. So that's the normal progression of things. But I want to challenge you to think of skills in a somewhat different way. So I want to start with artisanal skills. So we have a number of skills which might be anything from village craft skills, like your Kumbakonam brass works, to your Kanchipuram silk works, all the way to your fashion, high fashion, sewing and apparel design, and so on and so forth. Cooking, so it could be something which you might do in your kitchen, in a small hut on the roadside, all the way to a 5-star, 6-star hotel, except that it's called culinary art instead of cooking. But at the base of it, the level of skill is the same. So what you can see from here is that skills now can go from the lowest end to the highest end within the same category. So you can be a dressmaker in your own home, sewing blouses for a factory, or you could be a high-end boutique designer sewing your clothes for a premium market from a mass market. So if you look at skills from a slightly different way, actually the same skills can help you see a variety of professions and careers. The next level might be your technical skills, your building, carpentry. In fact, carpentry could well be an artisanal skill as well. Machining, auto repair, electronics, nursing, all of this. So these are your technical skills. And you notice that I've stopped using the word vocational, because the word vocational really carries a very negative stigma and connotation. So I think that we should try to change the narrative, change our vocabulary to suit the fact that many of these people want to be in a higher end skill rather than in a lower end skill. And what we need to do is to help them progress from that lower end skill to the higher end skill, the sooner the better, rather than to keep them there. Then we have a range of digital skills which go all the way from coding, cybersecurity to mobile commerce, and a whole lot of things. In fact, it was mentioned about Uberization. So you need a certain degree of digital skills, even if you might be a nurse, even if you might be a driver, and so on and so forth. Then you have social skills. And there are some people who are very suited to this, your hospitality people, your public relations people, in fact teachers and leaders need to have a high rate of social skills in customer service. I'm not sure whether your call center people need social skills, they don't see the people they're dealing with, but perhaps they also need a certain amount of empathy when they're dealing with them. Then of course you have your analytical skills, people who deal with numbers, your engineers, your financiers, forensics, accounting, data science, statisticians, and so on and so forth. Now you may ask me, these are not skills, this is knowledge. Well, I will urge you to rethink, I will urge you to think of them as skilled people rather than knowledge people. And I'll come to this point about knowledge and skills together in a short while. Then we have thinking skills. In fact, we had a conference 20 years ago in Singapore on thinking conference. Can Singaporeans think and people think? How do you introduce thinking skills in the school curriculum? So planning, for example, strategizing, policy making, learning how to learn is a thinking skill. Creative skills, writing, designing, music, art, curating, and so on and so forth. And specialized skills. This is where you need professional qualification. Doctors, surgeons, lawyers, fintech, military, sports, economics, language. They're very, very specialized. You need a lot of training in that very specific, narrow area to be a specialist in that area. I haven't got one more line there, which I thought I would put, is there are professions which require no skills. Unfortunately. I think you can guess. It's time for election from time. No training needed. Now, Mr. Lakshminarayana mentioned knowledge, skills, and attitude. And I think this is a very, very important point because skills are multifaceted. You can't depend on one of these. You've got to have a range of these. You've got to have your social skills with your artisanal skills. You've got to have your analytical skills with your specialized skills. You've got to have your creative skills with your digital skills. You've got to have a number of those under your belt. So it is not a single skill. They are multifaceted. And I think this is very important, especially when you want to become an entrepreneur. You can't be an entrepreneur with technical skills alone. You need marketing skills, you need organizational skills, you need communication, you need influencing, you need fundraising. You can't depend on other people to be doing this if you're an entrepreneur. If you're producing a movie, for example, if you are producing Bahubali, it's based on computer animation principle. But look at the amount of other range of skills that are needed to make that film successful. Drawings. So it's not just technical, there's a whole lot of other multifaceted skills that you have to build. Skills cannot be separated from the domain knowledge that it is based on. Even a simple tour guide needs to have knowledge of what other things, places that he is taking people to in order to give a good experience. So you need good people skills, but you also need a solid amount of historical knowledge, geographical knowledge, climate knowledge. You need a whole range of things in order to create that customer experience. Same with a retailer. Retailers got to have product knowledge. A bookseller needs to have product knowledge. But unfortunately, we don't tend to see skills as part of knowledge. In fact, the most skilled person that I can think of is probably a heart surgeon or a brain surgeon. We never think of a surgeon or a dentist as a skilled person. We always think of them as a professional person. But in fact, the level of skill is huge. And even at that level, they can be replaced by robotic control. A nurse, for example, machinist, mechanic, builder, all of them require a certain amount of domain knowledge to go with their skill set. The skill set by itself doesn't work. Now I got the third ingredient, which was mentioned very passionately by Mr. Lakshminarayana, is the idea of quality and ethics. And I do have to say that this is missing from much of the curriculum that I have seen. I'm proud to say that in the Polytechnic which I founded, I also started a Center for Character Education, which was absolutely essential to train students about ethics, that their word is their bond, that if they give a timeline for delivery, they have to stick to that timeline for delivery. Because once you start missing the timeline, your creditworthiness and your trustworthiness has dropped several steps. So I think this is very important. The reliability of your word, the pride that you take in the work that you do, and an initiative to keep on learning and upskilling yourself. And we need to put substantial emphasis, at least 25% of any institutional curricula into this area. Productivity, quality, because if you can get your quality right, you save a huge amount of cost in rework, in passing that defect down the line to someone else and pointing the finger down the road. So everybody in the chain, in the value chain, has to deliver zero defect. And the Japanese know this very, very well. So we come to what Bruce presented a little bit earlier, is that there has to be a very tight link. And Vidisha also mentioned this in the Singapore context, how from an economic master plan, we come up with the competency gaps, create the educational and training infrastructure, deliver the skills and knowledge, and then you begin to see market and wage adjustments taking place. But at some point, this will lead you to non-competitiveness, then to go back to another next round of economic master plan, and then this is how the cycle goes. And this is how it has happened in Singapore. So you can see, for example, from 1960 all the way to today, the GDP has risen from 7 million to 72 billion. 7 billion to 72 billion. GDP here, per capita, GDP per capita. So we have moved in cycles. And with this cycle, there comes a training cycle. There comes a reinvestment cycle in education, in training, a complete revamp of curriculum, complete revamp of teaching styles, complete revamp of facilities, and so on and so forth. So I want to mention that in this cycle, it's very important to keep the individual in mind. We have been talking about people, students, trainees as a commodity. But they are all individuals. And I want to mention that they all have individual aptitudes. And I think Mr. Lakshminarayana mentioned this. They have different aptitudes, because if you go back to this for a second, these reflect some of the aptitudes that people have. Some people are social, some people are technical, some people are numerate, some people are work with their hands, they are artisanal, they are craftsmen. So you can't force people into the wrong skill set. If you do that, basically it is going to be a waste. And this is not surprising, people drop out. And in Singapore, we have this phenomenon of cupcake lawyers. People who have been heavily invested to become lawyers or doctors, and after 3 years they drop out and start a cupcake business. Just imagine of the misfit that has happened. Okay? They should have been artisanal from the very beginning. They do produce good artisanal cupcakes. So, the career progress is important from an unskilled. You take a person who's unskilled or semi-skilled, move him up or her up to be a skilled worker, and then progress them to be a technician, a technologist, give them supervisory skills as and when they need it, and then to managerial and beyond. And this is why I say that while you're giving generic, loaded upfront, generic skills, you provide them with just-in-time skills as and when they need it. But what we have been doing in schools and institutions and technical colleges is we give them just-in-case knowledge. In other words, we give them as much as we can just in case they might need someone. So in a general curriculum, you'll see a mishmash of things, from communication to leadership to supervision to statistics, just in case they need it. It's much better to give them a broad range of generic employability skills and then give them just in time as and when they progress up the career ladder to give them the skills that they need within that career path. I want to speak up for the polytechnics in Singapore because Bruce has spoken about ITE. You might be surprised to know that the polytechnics are the bedrock of post-secondary education in Singapore. 40% of students leaving grade 10 go through the polytechnics. 40%, which means that it's more than the 25% that go on to the academic route and more than the 25% that go through the IT. What this means is that even if I go on from a polytechnic to a degree, I already have a basic work-based qualification. Even without a degree, I'm able to find a job. I'm self-sustainable. I'm self-sustainable. And with my polytechnic diploma, I can work for a couple of years or 3 years, find out where my true passion lies, and then take a degree in an area that suits me. It gives me far more flexibility. So in the polytechnic, it's industry driven. It's industry oriented. It's work skills oriented. So they are trained in problem solving, rational decision making. They understand industry. They understand the needs of the industry. And then when they go on to the further education, they are much more attuned to what they would like to do as a career. So let me just finish by talking about the critical success factors of TVT. Is that not only should we be training for the market with industry, we should look at the student's aptitude as well. We shouldn't forget that the student is an individual, and we don't treat a mass of 100,000 or 1 million as if they're all the same. They're not the same. And therefore, we need to find out what is it that they're interested in, what is it they're capable of doing, what is it they like doing. Because if we find that, then what they like doing is what they're going to succeed the most in. Secondly, they need a very strong school foundation, which is why in the ITE now, they only take students who have been in school for 10 years. As Bruce said, it used to be called It's the End. Why was it called It's the End? Because they used to take dropouts. So if you drop out of school, you get pushed into ITE. So now, you can't go to a technical program without a basic in communication, in language, in science and mathematics. So a certain amount of base level numeracy and literacy is needed before you can go on to technical education. And of course, you need good training infrastructure. It doesn't have to be the greatest. It doesn't have to be the top end. But you need good training infrastructure. And as far as possible, to mimic industry. And you can get industry partners to come in to help you with it, just like the Siemens one. A point that is less taken care of in India, I would say, is that the instructors, while they may have a basic degree in engineering or civil engineering or electrical engineering, they are not trained in pedagogy. They're not trained in assessment. They're not trained in the moral fiber, in the fiber of education. What does it take to be a teacher? What does it take to create learning outcomes? This is not part of their upbringing as a teacher, and particularly so in technical education. They might get some teacher training if they go to a high school or a government public school, but they don't get this if they go and teach an ITI or a technical institution. So therefore, the training for technical pedagogy is critical. How do you convert someone with a degree to be a technical instructor? Thirdly, I think gender balance. We create institutions which are single gender. ITIs, if you look at ITIs, they are mostly single gender. Whereas if you mix a variety of disciplines and programs, you could create gender diversity. And if you create gender diversity, gender balance, what you get is less discipline problems. Because the presence of girls in the school will reduce the propensity to ill discipline by the boss, and vice versa. Bridges and ladders. No career path, no educational path should be seen as a dead end. There should always be progress, regardless of what route you take. So you might start with the slowest route, but you should still have the hope and the optimism that you can progress towards a managerial position with a degree. In fact, a degree might not be necessary to get a managerial position, but you should be able to see a route, the light at the end of the tunnel. And I would like to suggest to policymakers here is to position a skills diploma as an attainable goal for all students, as an attractive option, as an alternative to secondary school education, as an alternative to CBSE or State Board leaving examinations. We've been through this whole of government perspective. Of course, it's much easier in Singapore because we have the Ministry of Education, Trade and Industry, and the Ministry of Manpower working very closely together. And finally, I just want to say, just as you want to create learners, just as you want to create learners who continue to learn, we as policymakers and educators need to ourselves continue to learn and find best practices that suit us. So let me finish by asking you this question. Which of the skills which I highlighted earlier do you think will survive the future? Which do you think is the ones that you want to invest in? So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. So that was a great bunch of presentations. Now, if anybody has questions, we can take them. Yes, sir.
Chairperson Priyalal, thank you very much for the excellent presentations. Even from the morning and the afternoon. I see a lot of educators and the policymakers are here. And in the morning, I think we mentioned about the industry code. And then we also heard, what is the indicator, the measuring guide to see whether the things have been delivered. Now, the industry 4 coming into operations, we know that digitalization, you name it, AI, machine learning, everything is there. Are we using the right measuring unit in terms of assessing productivity? I think I feel that the technology has come into the process of productivity. So if you are trying to measure, like in the industry 1 age, input versus output, whether that will stand still or whether the technology is in the process, so that our measuring tool has to change. Should we look at the new productivity measuring unit as core productivity? Because The hardwares, the softwares are now inching towards mindware, and it's everywhere. So if we go, I don't know whether this is a constraint to see how we can assess innovation. I think this was mentioned in the morning. So I would like to, I think the educators, I would like to get an answer. Thank you.
Dr. Varaprasad, did you understand the question? Maybe you can clarify it.
It's a very abstract question. But you know, as with all systems engineers, you start with the end in mind. So when you start with the end in mind, you ask yourself, what is it that you want? So that's really, you start with your measurement right at the very beginning. Before you plan your whole process, before your input, process and output, you must know what you want. So if you know what you want, and then you structure your process according to that. So if you want high employment rates, then you've got to take a number of steps, of which skills development is only one. Bringing in jobs, creating foreign investment, direct investment, so many other things come into play. Governance come into play, everything comes into play. Capital flow comes into play. So, but if you're just looking at, okay, the numbers of people with skills, it's a different measure. And let them find their own jobs. Let them create their own opportunities. We've empowered them to be able to start their own businesses. Then you come differently. So it all depends on, as Stephen Covey said, start with the end in mind.
But as you said, there is one more aspect to it. It is the low order thinking skills which we are assessing. High order thinking skills is very difficult to judge. Again, what purpose, what kind of assessment we are. When I talk about the high order thinking skills, because in the technical education quality is a technical program World Bank which has done in India. After completing the program for 5 years, they come out very clearly that students in India are only lots, they don't have hearts. Higher order thinking skills. Higher order thinking, as you know, in good taxonomy, not only understanding, reproducing, thinking, analyzing, synthesizing, and coming out with this. That is the kind of thing which, for that, the creativity measurements or assessment depends on different platforms. I don't think we can have a uniform these things.
Just one follow-up on my last, sorry, Bruce, quickly. And you want to talk about, I want to talk about employment. We always start with the first job. But I think we should be able to, in a position to see how people progress. So if I'm an institution, I not only want to know my employment rate of my graduates, I want to know where they are in 5 years' time. And that would address the higher order skills, like Mr. Lakshminarayana, because if I had trained them properly, they would have moved on to much higher positions, rather than being in pretty much the same position or same company. Sorry, Bruce.
Talking from the perspective of technical and vocational education institution, we want to train graduates who are fit for purpose, fit for the industry, and I've mentioned it. In the country's economic development, usually it goes through a cycle of very basic skills to higher order skills, to when technology is very prevalent and technological skills are very important, to very high order of innovation and creativity. And then, of course, I think you need to incorporate such skills into your training curriculum.
Any more questions? I have a few, so I can.
So this is for Dr. Lakshminarayana. You talked about the Siemens program. So what I'm interested in is, how did it start? What was Siemens' interest? What was your interest? Who made the first step? Because we're trying to sort of see whether we can scale it to other companies. So the process would be good to know.
So when I was Commissioner of Technical Education, I had introduced it way back in 2008. I have established 25 centers, each one in the district, each of these 23 districts, 25 in Hyderabad, where we went for a normal process. We have selected those two because Siemens training software has universal application. Most of the people use that kind of this. In fact, I have to tell you a small example. They have a software for jewelry making. I have selected some of the students who are coming from Goldsmith, Ironsmith and Potter families and given them this software. They did wonders. Because there are skills with their genes and you are reducing the drudgery, giving a software, their creativity is extremely good. Therefore, I was convinced and our teachers, in collaboration with our teachers, we have decided and our own teachers have come out with a policy skills book. They're in the front outside. And we have come out with a Siemens. In extension of that, Gujarat has done this Center for Excellence. When the state has, new state has created, that has come to the notice of the Chief Minister and he thought this is the things which are having the future, this IoT, robotics and other things, which will be, because his intention is students mostly in a number of colleges have more students are highly intelligent in all this, they are also interested in going anywhere in the globe. Therefore, we should be in a position to empower them so that they will not be here to go anywhere. That is the logic behind that. Therefore, we have. But for them also, as you said, they want, more people get developed. Why Google comes and Android development is one? Because it is in competition with others also. The cloud computing, it is in competition with Microsoft, Azure and other things. So these are some of the things which we should be in a position to use and use. That's the
Dr. Sam?
Yeah, so my question. So my question might be more relevant for Mr. Paul. I'm very impressed by the hardware in your institute. My simple question is, how do you ensure that all the equipment and hardware technologies you have in your institution is consistently up to date? And it's always following the industry trend. I mean, I ask this because there's all this debate about the division of labor between employers and training institutes, right? So there's one argument saying that schools can never catch up with the latest industry, latest technology, so we should just leave all these to firms. So that's why we have the German model to have trainees go to the workplaces to receive that kind of training as apprentices, right? So in China, the vocational schools, the biggest challenge they are facing nowadays is the same issue, right? How they keep their technology up to date, right? Sometimes they get money from the state, sometimes they get donation from a collaborative firm. That's just one-time thing, right? Within 5 years, they find their equipment out of date, updated again. So I just wonder if you can share your experience, how to keep your equipment and technology up to date in a more sustainable way.
Could I just add a question which is related to this? Could you just explain your financing model? Who paid for these buildings and who pays for the fees and how much money you get from the government? Is it how much the student? What as a percentage of your cost? What are student fees and who paid for the buildings?
Okay, I think very quickly, I would say that we are quite fortunate that the government of Singapore is very focused in investing in education in Singapore. And it's not just education at the university level, it's education at university, polytechnic, and IT level. As to the amount the government invests, the amount of school fees that the students have to pay is about 4% of their recurrent budget. So in fact, 96% of the budget comes from the government. So there's a very generous kind of investment that the government puts in education, and there's good outcomes that comes out of it. You have a low youth unemployment rate, people get good jobs and so on. But having said that, you're right that it's not every time you can afford very expensive equipment. That's the reason why we partner 120 companies in the various fields. And we always look at the number 1, number 2, number 3, usually 1 and 2 of the particular leaders in a particular area, and we partner with them. And the partnership is not just giving off the hardware to you. It's also the software, and more importantly, the transfer of expertise to your staff. I think that's even more important. So I think we have a whole range of partners, from engineering to IT to business and services and so on. This will enrich the training facilities and systems within the institution.
Maybe I pose 2 questions. First one is to Mr. Ko. The ITs have had a remarkable experience and are remarkably successful with the model being exported to so many countries, which the chart showed. However, the transition from the capital-intensive phase or the high manufacturing phase in the 90s, 80s, up to the 80s, to the knowledge economy, that's not easy anywhere. Could you talk a little bit about the processes, the obstacles, or the challenges that arose? And another piece that, the economists carried a piece on the Rolls Royce, and it's very widely quoted. And one of the things that they said changed perceptions of ITP was, aside from the amazing infrastructure, was giving the students a sense of ownership. And I mentioned something as seemingly mundane as festivals. And that led to a great deal of pride. So in your experience, to what extent do you believe that shaped, I guess that would fall under hardware. My second question, if I may, to Dr. Lakshminarayana. So you put up some numbers, and one of the numbers, aside from the Siemens, which you will address, is the number of engineering and polytechnic graduates. 115,000. And 21,500 were actually placed. So this is not data for just 1 year. I'm assuming the trend carries on. We wonder what labor markets, what's going on, and how the state education department is obviously funding some of them, what the project is doing. And as an aside, you also know that the diaspora from Andhra Pradesh worldwide in the IT sector is enormously successful and influential. How do you reconcile this? I'm completely missing something in the picture. There's a huge gap that you see between how the diaspora is growing and domestic labor market.
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. I think transition is never easy. When you transit from one phase to the next, there's a lot of disruption. And one of the, I would say, most difficult thing is to change the mindset. And you start the change of mindset from within. Mindset of staff, of management is a big, job to do. So you must get everybody to buy in to what you want to do. That is the reason why we have this 5 years strategic plan that we plan. And within the 5 years strategic plan, it seems to be a very simple kind of slogan that we say, but it takes 2 years at least, to come up with that particular strategic plan. And we will involve stakeholders including, of course, management, board members, staff, school teachers, industry leaders, even parents, students, graduates, union. In fact, our unions are also involved to get everybody, coming together to be aligned in the things that we're going to do. And in fact, the planning of this 5-year strategic plan is a combination of all the inputs from all the various stakeholders. That this is what we're going to achieve. And we translate it into, from the strategic plans, we have mission, vision, values, to the various goals that we want to achieve, and then the implementation plans for each particular goal, and we have KPIs, that comes with it, and we measure the KPIs year in, year out, and present it to the board. So it's a very intentional, very structured way of planning forward. And every year, we of course look at what we want to do for each particular plans that we want to do, and we execute it for each particular year. And within the 5 years, we'll complete all the plans. And over the years and so many plans, I must say that we're very happy that we implement probably about 90% of what we plan to do. And of course, as each year goes by, we need to modify as the environment changes. But essentially, we meet all the strategic plans. So as you go from let's say technology intensive to the knowledge intensive, the way you teach, the way the pedagogy will have to change. The equipment that you use, the partners that you have, going to change. The classroom going to be changed. With new learning technologies, your students' profile, being the digital natives, also have changed. So you got to adapt to all these changes as you come along the way. In terms of students' aspect, one of the very critical, I think, change in ITE is to change the confidence level of our students. I think that's a very basic thing. When they come to us, usually they are not the type that perform very well in schools. So we have to give them opportunities to show success. Small success leads to bigger success, and the confidence level builds up, and we give them more responsibilities. And with that, they succeed and become more confident. And in a way, with that, I think they can succeed in life. So there's a lot of strategies that we use, and all this boils down to the strategic plans that we have in place every 5 years.
Just can just answer this question, or if you want to add? Yeah, go on.
In addition to what Mr. Ho said, at the policy level, as we move from the low skill, high skill, capital innovation, at the high end, the government is also changing the ratios. So it used to be that in the 60s and 70s, we were training 1 engineer, 4 technologists or paraprofessionals, and 8 technicians. But as we changed and progressed knowledge economy, that became 1:2:4. And then it became 1:2:2, and then there's a bounce in the middle, almost like 1:2:1. But it becomes an Eiffel Tower rather than a pyramid, because the university then goes on to do more masters, more PhDs, more postdocs, a lot more research money. So the knowledge economy, while things change within each level, as Bruce has been mentioning, the numbers and structure of the manpower is changing. So it happens at several levels.
Even what you said is 100%, and I totally agree with you. Wherever our people have gone in the world, they come to you. But because of in 2008, suddenly the government has introduced fees reimbursement. That means every school is a fee. 30,000. Therefore, new colleges have come out with bad restrictions. Now in the last 2 years, both in Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, we are taking efforts so that some of the colleges are closed down. And we have to be very clear about it. And maybe in the next 1 or 2 years, others should have. That is the reason why we are insisting on rigor in the curriculum, training for the teachers, selection of teacher courses. All these things, keeping in view the AICTE norms, we as a state government, with the State Council of Higher Education, we are trying to do some of those things so that we should to stop those kind of things. It's an alarming thing. And moreover, in South India, parents, because of peer pressure, they think that life is nothing but engineering and education. It has come like that. That's the problem. World is very wide. As he said, artists, there are a number of things that is where we are. And one more thing is, we are all around giving importance to mathematics, language is being forgotten. But Tamil classic Tirukural says, we have to treat language and mathematics as our two eyes. That is important. In fact, when you see the CEOs of 500 Fortune companies, precisely 45% of the CEOs are not from engineering. They are from liberal arts, social sciences, humanities. These are the kind of things. Because that's the reason why language is very essential. Unless you read classics, you cannot assess a person individually. Unless you read Charles Dickens, you cannot use the word Scrooge. Unless you read Orwell, you cannot use the sentence Orwellian future. Because these are the characters which, as a leader, should be in a position to assess the inner qualities of an individual. But unfortunately, students are not in a position to describe. If I ask them to describe me, they cannot describe. They describe by outward characters, inner characters. In the entrepreneurship or leadership, apart from these things, that is very, very essential. That will come from the reading habits. Unfortunately, students are totally, they are not treating books as their companies. They are not looking to books for advice. That is the thing in engineering, mostly engineering students, that is the problem. We need to correct that problem. And all of us should.
There is no mic, so you can ask the question. Can you go ahead? Yeah.
Since this seminar is about learning from each other, let me share a few reflections. I've been fortunate to have been a student in the system. I've been fortunate to have been a contributor in education because for 40 years I trained Singapore's teachers and school principals, and I'm now a researcher of the system. One of the things that strikes me about the system is that it has taken us 50 years almost to get to where we are. It was never always like this, and I think there are some references earlier on to the sort of circumstances that we face. Reform, building a system is going to take a long time. And one of the fortunate things that happened in Singapore is that we had essentially a one-party system. We had different ministers of education, but the core objectives of education never changed. And that is, I think, a primary reason why our investment and focus on human capital has been so significant in our growth. Secondly, there's a macro element, there's a political economy element that we should remember. And that is the circumstances that face Singapore at independence were hugely, hugely stressful. In fact, that period is called the politics of survival. And so because we were resource poor, human capital was the only resource that we had to develop. So if you look at what Bruce was saying about the level of investment even today in something like the ITE, that is because that level of investment earlier on paid off for us. It paid off in terms of the quality we were able to achieve, but it also paid off because I think at a policy level, we looked at both demand and supply. We were industrializing, and we knew then that successful industrialization would need a certain type of skilled worker. Right? So we knew there were going to be jobs. The challenge then was to provide supply for that. And so the VITB and the ITE was a way of meeting that. So I think we have to remember that it's not just a matter of providing the skills, but the employment creation is also going to be important. Let me end with just one other remark. This year is the 20th anniversary of a major attempt to reform the nature of teaching and learning. And what you said about teachers and teaching strikes me because I've been in teacher education. 20 years on, in a small country, you might ask how much has the needle moved from a content-centric, teacher-dominated system to one that we all think 21st century. Only a little. That should tell us that it's going to take a long time to change teacher habits, teacher practices. And so there's a lot of work to be done in teacher preparation and professional development. And I think if we don't attend to that, K-12 is going to be a disaster area no matter what you do at post-secondary. And I think we all face, I think in the developing countries, a learning crisis. Not just a skills crisis, but a learning crisis as well. And I think we should focus attention on that.
That is what last week World Development Report is about.
So one of the reasons I hate being a moderator is I don't get to ask my questions, but I have to just say by an extension of the session. So I did not want to let your comment pass about these cupcake lawyers. Maybe they became cupcakes because they were lawyers. I think you implied that their lawyer education was a waste. I mean, some of you might think that all lawyer education is a waste. But I think what bothered me about your remark is you imply that we know how to play God. We know what kids should be. I mean, why did he become a lawyer? He was good with his hands. I mean, you're playing God so early in the game. People know education is a waste. Why should what you do in your life be linked to your education? And what's wrong with making cupcakes?
They are not being cupcakes, they make cupcakes.
What's wrong with making cupcakes?
No. In fact, my point was the absolute reverse of what you're saying. What I'm saying is, we need to find out what people's passions are, what their interests are. And therefore, in school, we should give them a wide range of opportunities to manifest and express these different interests. Whereas it is the parents who say, I want you to be a lawyer, notwithstanding that they may not have interest in doing lawyering. But having said that, if they become a lawyer and go to open up a deli, so be it. But someone else, because lawyers' places are not aplenty in school, in the university, someone else might have taken that opportunity and become a barrister and a judge or whatever.
So an engineer who becomes a civil servant, you would view as a waste of
no,
the civil service.
I would say, no, engineer to me is a default position to me. In other words, an engineer is not trained to make things necessarily, but to think.
So a doctor who became a civil servant would be a waste of a doctor's life.
If he became a civil servant immediately, I would say this. Because the investment to create a doctor is huge. And a lot of public money goes into it.
But
unless it is private money.
There is a streaming system here in Singapore, right? Some kids get a letter saying you can't, you should go to the IT system, right? Is there a system? Am I wrong that there is a system where 25% of the kids are said you should go to IT politics? Maybe you can explain it. That's the
it depends to a large extent on their grades in certain landmark examinations. But there are also ways to overcome that kind of allocation.
So, but there is a streaming system, and that seems to contribute to the success of the system. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just trying to understand: is that sort of nudging useful for maintaining the pyramid or the Eiffel Tower or the?
To some extent, yes. We have to admit that we do have a very efficient system. So, efficient system is geared to reduce wastage. So therefore, it's best that students learn at a pace that they can cope with. And therefore you might take 4 years, or 5 years, or even 6 years in order to complete your secondary education. And if you can't complete your secondary education, then it's more difficult to get into the next stage. You can go into a sideways path to go to the next stage. So yes, it is based on reducing wastage. So in Singapore, 95% of 10th graders will go on to post-secondary. That means only 4 to 5% don't complete 10 years of schooling.
Did you want to add to that, please?
I think I fully agree with what Dr. Prasad said. We have a very efficient system in Singapore. So those people, they have a choice on what type of courses they want to go into, and you can apply, by giving the choices, you select the choices. But there's always a minimum entry requirement for that particular course, and also there's competition to buy for that particular course.
Anybody else have any questions?
I have a couple of questions actually. One is around the skill mapping. when I set out into this field of skill development 9 years ago, I read this anecdote about a recruitment firm which was hiring crane operators for an organization, and there was a very high attrition rate. And when they went deep into the reason why that was happening, it was because the recruitment manager was an extrovert. He was predisposed towards hiring extroverts. And the last thing you want an extrovert to do is sit on crane and individually. So I was at that time I was in Europe, and I thought, this is something that we work on, do some psychometric mapping and do a skill mapping. And 9 years into skill development in Odisha and different parts, it hasn't worked. That hasn't worked at all for us. We find that when we go into the field, into the villages, and we interact with the students, it's very difficult to administer any kind of test there. Right? It's only when they come to the centers and they actually take up the work, as you said, that only when you get into it, you really know whether you're fit for it or not. So my question is, has skill mapping in an organized way actually worked in Singapore, and how do you go about it? How do you build these tools? Is there something you can learn from?
We're all scarred by planning in India.
So in Singapore, we also recognize that many students take up courses which eventually they do not end up, working in a particular field. And that's particularly because, they do not know what's happening in the job market. So what we're trying to do is the education and career guidance that we're going to start early in school. So in secondary school now we have ECG counselors, we call them, that will try to advise students at the various stages on what's available in the market, and what are their strengths, their weaknesses, and what would be maybe best suited for them because of their strengths and weaknesses.
I just want to say that we don't do so much skill mapping on the basis of tests, but rather on the basis of things that they do and what the teachers observe. So in school, they will have a wide range of non-curriculum activities. So it might be arts, it might be music, it might be sports, it might be leadership, it might be uniform groups, it might be photography, it could be martial arts and so on. So students who veer to those areas that they enjoy, like teamwork, going by themselves. So if you are a physical person, you will go into sports, you might go trekking, mountain climbing. If you are a one-man show, you will do rock climbing. So this will manifest itself, and the teachers observe this. So it's not by a lot of psychometric testing, but it's only advice that they can give. You cannot dictate ultimately what the student, because the parents can't do it. So we don't say, look, you are only suited to this, you're only suited to that. Because nobody is unidimensional. They are multidimensional. I might be an introvert in school, but I might be an extrovert outside school.
Also, I think it's a very basic question. Maybe I should research more. Is there a qualification framework in Singapore, and to what level does ITE take? To what level of qualifications, and what about the polytechnics, and how do they work? Are they all government? Are they private? I just want to understand that a bit better.
Actually, the Skills Future Singapore is that brought under the Ministry of Education. They have a chief skills officer, and also they have a team that will come up recently all the skills framework, and they will try to also map the various training providers and what courses they provide to the whatever skill standards that's available in the level. So there is a conscious working out of the skill centers. At ITE, we award what we call the National ITE Certificate, called NITEC, and then the higher NITEC, and now we have the work and learn, diplomas, which are skills diploma.
Sorry, I just want to revisit the question that I asked earlier. As a researcher, my interest lies in looking at incentive structures how do you bring different stakeholders to work towards the same design incentives so the stakeholders are working towards the same end. I spoke earlier about the involvement of the private sector, of government agencies, of industry associations, and other entities coming together to decide on articulate the 5-year plan. Could you talk a bit about the process through which, and that's the real fascinating thing, because the only thing we hear about are the final outcomes.
Yeah, I think it takes a lot of hard work to work with all the stakeholders. And a lot of this, I would say, is a lot of personal efforts by the management, by the staff, to engage, people from industry, from agencies, even from, alumni members. And we have a lot of engagement activities that we do with the industry. We pay, industry visits, very often. And we also hear out their issues, their problems in terms of gaps that they find, perhaps in, our training institutions. And we'll try to close the gaps. We invite them to our academic advisory committees. In fact, they chair the academic advisory committees that overlooks the curriculum and do recommendations. Of course, the academic council, which is internal, will have to endorse and approve all the courses that's provided. So there's a very heavy involvement in people-to-people contact, and at times we invite them for occasions that we celebrate things with them, we give them awards for their contributions, and most people would want to contribute to society in that way as part of their CSR.
I guess we're all set. Okay? Yeah. Thank you. I think we have tea outside now and take a break and then come back together.